think it was the one thing I had in my life that I would turn up to with a motivation to achieve and to get better at every day. And that was because I was surrounded by people which had the same ambition. So I think I was lucky. I had great coaches, great people to swim with.
You're listening to Conversations at Government House, featuring interviews by the Governor of Western Australia, the Honourable Kim-Beazley AC.
Kaya.
He's a triple Olympian, world record holder, celebrity Masterchef winner and a well-known WA restaurant owner. Eamon Sullivan has ridden the wave of success both in the pool and in business. And the Governor caught up for a chat at a time when the impact of COVID was throwing everyone some pretty tough life lessons.
Well, I guess the moment anybody sees you and thinks of you, they immediately think of your global standard swimming. And well, really, I suppose in some ways it's your childhood and young adulthood. What got you into swimming?
Firstly, thanks for having me. Yeah. Swimming, I got into swimming because of asthma. So I think it was around year 1 or year 2, I had childhood asthma, nothing too serious, and doctors recommended swimming to strengthen the lungs, and that's how I got into it. And I didn't like it at all. I used to try and skip out of swimming and think of any excuse not to go. And I remember I think the first time I actually started trying at swimming was I used to have this little trick where my mum would drop me off at the pool and she'd go off and do shopping because it was after school. And I found this great little tree that had a branch perfect for sitting in, had this little dip. And I used to wave goodbye to her. She'd drive off. I'd walk in and walk out of the swimming pool, go to my tree and sit there and wait for her to come back. And obviously I wasn't very smart because I never wet my hair. So she'd pick me up and my hair would be bone dry. So it didn't take her long to figure out that I actually wasn't swimming. And one day she did the same thing and looped around the block and I was sitting in the tree, and I'll never forget the look on her face as she drove towards me that day. And from then on, she started coming in and watching me and making sure that I was swimming. And eventually I started trying and it kind of took off from there.
Well, I was made to swim because of not asthma, but because of polio.
Yeah, right.
And I can't say I achieved anything with it at all, except fighting my way through jellyfish down at the no longer existent Claremont Baths. But you must have fallen in love with it at some time, because you could not have been the champion you were without at least taking a sense of accomplishment out of it.
Yeah, I think I fell in love with the sense of achievement and the camaraderie you kind of built through that. Because swimming itself, when you're training to that level, it's not that enjoyable because you spend a lot of time in your own head if you're swimming a long way. If you're swimming a 6 to 7 kilometre session and they're 400s back to back, there's not much time to chat with your mates. But I don't think I ever loved swimming itself, and I still find it hard to get motivation to get out of bed and go for a swim. But I loved the people that I met. I guess when I say sense of accomplishment, I meant it's the first time I think I learned in my life what a goal was and how to work towards goals. And I think at the time I didn't think about it like that. It was more the feeling you had after you finished a hard set or you'd done something you'd never done before. But it's something you put your sights on and put your effort towards. And as a young kid, I guess when I didn't enjoy school either, I must say. But I think it was the one thing I had in my life that I would turn up to with a motivation to achieve and to get better at every day. And that was because I was surrounded by people which had the same ambition. So I think I was lucky. I had great coaches, great people to swim with, and along the way just had a lot of fun. And I think I was able to focus on that because I had that environment around me as well.
That's really interesting, because you sort of think of somebody riven with ambition. Because you look at sports in Australia, we take swimming very seriously in this country. We take our champions very seriously. And of all the sports that we have that would be of Olympic standard, that really sort of stands out in the public mind, as opposed to athletics or the lonely road that those folk who are the elite athletes hoe when they're trying to get themselves into the Olympic teams. Swimming seen as something a bit above all that. So you sort of would have the feeling that you were driven by ambition, but from the way you're putting it, it's mates, it's conviviality.
I think so. Like I never had dreams to be an Olympic swimmer. I think I was doing it because I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed turning up every day and seeing the same people. And no one enjoys getting up at 5 a.m. and jumping into a pretty freezing cold pool. But the memories I have of those times, looking back on it, I really enjoyed. Would I do it again now? Probably not.
No.
But I think once I got in that to the level where everyone had those dreams, I think it became more of a dream of mine. I think early on it was just doing it because I didn't know what else to do, and I enjoyed it. But once I got to the level where I kind of saw that next level of where to take myself, I think that's where the passion and the drive to be the best really kicked in. It certainly wasn't from an early age.
Of all your moments in sport, your Olympics, your Commonwealth Games, World Swimming Championships, all the great competitions, iconic competitions you've been in, what's been your best moment?
I think individually it would have been the 2008 Olympic trials in Sydney. So I'd broken the world record in the lead up to that. And I guess leading into that meet, I wasn't sure if it was a fluke or not. But I managed to break the world record in the 52 more times back to back, day after day. And it was, the second time I broke it in the semi-final was, it felt like the best race of my life. And I remember warming up for the final and not feeling as good. And I really had this mental battle of wanting to go faster. It was the first time I really felt like I could shut out the negative thoughts in my head because I was so confident in myself, and managed to break the world record again. And that was the fastest time I ever did in the 50. I think as far as a team memory goes, it would be the 2011 World Champs when we beat the US and France in the 4x1 relay, which is the first time I think at the World Champs the US hadn't won for, I think it was like 20 years or something. So we won by about 0.4 of a second, and I was the last swimmer. And we'd been in front the whole race, and I was absolutely crapping my dacks at the time because I was coming towards the end of my career. I definitely wasn't in my best form, and I was lucky the boys got us out into a good lead, and I managed to hold on that final leg and to win a gold medal at a World Champs with your mates in that sort of fashion was really memorable.
Well, that's fantastic memories. And as you ploughed up and down staring at that black line, did you start to plan out a subsequent career, or do you start to think of what you wanted to be as you sort of recognise, well, you're not going to be in this for your whole life. Where do I need to be?
Not really. I think it's funny, the black line's always there. I don't remember ever looking at it, but if I swim in the open water, I'll swim zigzags and I can't swim straight to save my life. So I must have been looking at it. But often when you're training, it's almost like meditation. You're kind of so focused on one thing. And for me, it was, body position, your core and what your arms were doing. So I was, even though it's a long time to be focused on one thing, I was quite often just focused on my technique. So, it was that and the last song you heard in the car before you jumped in the pool. And it could sometimes be the worst song in the world, and you just stuck on repeat for the whole 2-hour session. So you could drive yourself a bit mad if you listened to the wrong music before you got into the training pool. But I think my decision for post career was a bit of luck and a bit of the right place at the right time and knowing the right people, I guess, to get to where I am now, and just making a few right decisions, but also taking a few risks along the way, I think.
I mean, Celebrity Masterchef is a serious competition. That's seriously hard to win.
Yeah.
You actually have to be a genuine talent to be able to do that. Do you have any chef's training, or are you just interested?
I just loved cooking. I always loved cooking, and before I left school, I wanted to open a cafe. I didn't really. Everyone knew they wanted to be a lawyer or a horticulture and viticulture, and I never knew what I wanted to do. And I loved home economics at school because I could always eat extra food in between training sessions, and I just needed it. So it was a welcome relief to get more food in my stomach during the day. But I loved Perth didn't have a great cafe culture back in the early 2000s. It was all your chain restaurants and mass-produced food that didn't have too much love. And I think the owner-operator mentality wasn't as big as it is right now. And I think Masterchef has helped drive that culture, not just in Perth, but everywhere. And Melbourne and Sydney always had that vibe. And, but swimming took off as soon as I left school. So I couldn't really do the chef hours and the apprenticeships and everything that was required. And I was lucky enough to be at a point in my career where I didn't have to work to be able to travel and do what I needed to do. And then, when I moved to Sydney, in between training sessions, I would just watch the cooking channel. And, that love of, I guess, cooking from school and learning basic techniques took me to my next level with my diet as far as knowing what went into dishes as opposed to, just expecting other people to cook for you. You learnt that scrambled eggs to taste nice has to have cream and butter, and it's not as good for you as you think it is. And I basically, I used to cook for my mum and my dad in between when they were working and I was training at home before I left home. And I just took that love of cooking over east with me. And my manager that I moved to at the time, when we moved, you had to fill out a sheet of your hobbies, interests, where you see yourself in 5-10 years. And one of my hobbies was cooking that I wrote down. And I remember the day they rang and said, it was the year after the first Masterchef. And they said, there's a celebrity version happening. Would you be interested? Because we know you like cooking. And I said yes straight away. And I was lucky enough to get on the show. And I was as competitive in the lead up to that as I was in my training. I was having people over every weekend, cooking dinner parties. I was asking people to bring random ingredients and me sort of do a mystery box type challenge. I was memorising recipes. I was, I put a lot of effort into it. And I was really serious about it. And I think, to a degree, there were some other celebrities on there that probably weren't as invested as I was. I think a lot of people were pushing cookbooks or had different agendas, whereas I was generally there because I love to cook. So I treated it like a competition. I think others were there to have fun and to have fun along the way, but I was there to win.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, most of us, or most folk at the age that you're at then, when you look at the sportsmen and women around the country, there's a lot of thought going into, when should they get to this or that degree, when should they move out of the sports institute into the medical faculty or whatever it is that they're going to do. They're actually safe options. People work towards, generally speaking, quite safe options. You take your risk in sport. You take a huge risk with your body, your sanity, as you do that. But you don't take a risk after that. You took a risk then, and then you took another risk. That was to set yourself up in business and be confident enough to think that you could actually prepare a restaurant, the food in the restaurant, that would actually get folk coming back. How'd you take that punt?
I think the question is it confidence or stupidity? And I think there's a bit of both. I think, I did do any university. I did one unit of university, which was part of a sports science degree, which every athlete kind of does because it's safe. And I remember the first course I did was anatomy. And luckily I had a lot of injuries. So I'd been to physio twice a week for nearly 10 years at that point, and I kind of knew more than anyone on the day one because I knew everything from learning myself. And I remember it came to the first test, and there's 150 origins and insertions in the body and 150 muscles, and you had to learn the origin and insertion for every muscle, but they tested you on 10. And I just thought that was ridiculous, that you could have to study so much and be your fate in that course is dictated by 10 questions. I just didn't really believe in that. So I just said, I'm going to do something myself and not have to worry about this. And, my passion for cooking and I just thought I'd give it a go. And I think I was lucky enough to be at the point of my career where I had a bit of money to invest in and opening a business. And my first one was a coffee shop in Subiaco, which was Louis Baxter's. And that was in 2011 after we won the gold medal in Shanghai for the 4x1. But I was